Titus Malachi Bramble. A name that, for many football fans, instantly triggers a reaction. Sometimes a smirk, sometimes a sigh, and occasionally a moment of disbelief. For over a decade, he was a regular fixture in the Premier League, racking up appearances against the best teams in the country and holding his own in one of the most demanding leagues in world football. And yet, ask a group of fans what they remember most about him, and the answers probably won't start with praise. He's become one of the most curious case studies in English football, a player who had all the physical tools, pace, strength, and a powerful frame. Someone who managers trusted enough to start week in, week out, and yet his name became almost synonymous with uncertainty. But here's the thing. How does a defender manage to stay in the top flight for so long if he was really as bad as the meme suggests? Was it simply a case of being unfairly scapegoated? Or was there a deeper inconsistency that plagued his career from start to finish? In this video, we're going to take a closer look at Titus Bramble. Not just the viral moments or the infamous errors, but the full picture. We'll explore where he came from, how he rose through the ranks, and what really defined his time at clubs like Ipswich, Newcastle, Wigan, and Sunderland. Because while the internet might have made up its mind, the actual story is a bit more layered than many remember. So, let's get into it. Let's talk about Titus Bramble, a footballer trapped by his own narrative. In the late 90s, a young defender emerged from the Ipswich Town Academy with the kind of raw attributes that made scouts sit up and take notice. Titus Bramble was strong, quick, and surprisingly composed on the ball, a rare combination for a centre-back in English football at the time. At just 17 years old, he was handed his debut in the First Division, and by the turn of the millennium, Bramble was a fixture in a side pushing hard for promotion. Ipswich finally broke through in the 1999-2000 season, returning to the Premier League after years in the wilderness. For Bramble, it was a coming-of-age moment. Despite his youth, he didn't look out of place among seasoned professionals. The following season, he played his part in one of the most surprising stories in English football. Ipswich finishing 5th in the Premier League, qualifying for the UEFA Cup under George Burley. Bramble's performances weren't just steady, they were eye-catching. He wasn't a flashy player, but there was a confidence in his play that suggested real potential. England came calling at the under-21 level, and while the senior team never followed, many believed it was only a matter of time. At a time where English centre-backs were prized more for brawn than ball-playing ability, Bramble was seen as part of a new generation, one that could both defend and build from the back. The promise didn't go unnoticed. In 2002, Newcastle United, then pushing for Champions League football under Sir Bobby Robson, spent £6 million to bring Bramble to St James's Park. For context, that was serious money for a defender at the time, a statement of intent and of belief in Bramble's potential ceiling. This wasn't a gamble on a journeyman, this was a calculated investment in a young English defender who had, at one point, looked like the future. But what followed? The mistakes, the headlines, the memes, slowly buried that origin story. The perception began to overtake the player. The context got lost, and in the process, a layered, complex career became flattened into a punchline. Before we go there though, it's worth asking, what changed? How did a player who began with so much promise become trapped in his own narrative? Let's find out. For many footballers, a move to a club like Newcastle United is the dream. For Titus Bramble, it was the beginning of a 292-game Premier League career, but also the start of a reputation he'd struggled to shake. Signed in 2002 as a physically gifted ball-playing centre-back, Bramble arrived on Tyneside with promise and pedigree. But almost immediately, the microscope turned up the pressure. At a club where expectations dwarfed stability, one mistake became a storyline, and Bramble's errors, some genuine, some exaggerated, began to define him. Injuries disrupted his rhythm, but it was the lapses in concentration that stuck in people's minds. A mistimed clearance, a misjudged header. In an era of tabloid-driven football culture, Bramble quickly became an easy target. The butt of jokes, the scapegoat in post-match analysis. And yet, there was more to him than the lowlights. Under managers like Graham Souness and Glenn Roeder, he strung together consistent spells, even scoring key goals in European competitions. But the narrative was set. For every strong performance, fans remembered the blunder. A move to Wigan Athletic in 2007 seemed like a reset. There, Bramble quietly put together some of the best football of his career, even earning the club's Player of the Year award in 2009. But media perception doesn't track form. It clings to character, and Bramble's had already been written. His final Premier League stop came at Sunderland, again under Steve Bruce. But by this stage, the weight of reputation was immovable. Mistakes were magnified, positives were dismissed. Even when solid, the laughter lines were louder. Today, despite nearly 300 top-flight appearances and over a decade at the highest level, Titus Bramble is remembered more for his mishaps than his longevity. A player trapped not by ability, but by the story football chose to tell about him. For a man often remembered for moments of defensive chaos, it's easy to forget there's more to Titus Bramble than sliced clearances and viral compilations. While his on-pitch legacy became entangled in a kind of cult mockery, Bramble's off-field life paints a more complex and at times controversial picture. In the early 2010s, Bramble's name reappeared in headlines, though not for footballing reasons. He faced a series of high-profile legal issues that briefly overshadowed his career. In 2010, he was arrested alongside his brother, Titus Bramble, in relation to serious allegations. While Titus was released without charge, his brother was later convicted. The following year, Bramble faced further accusations involving inappropriate conduct and possession of a controlled substance. These matters ultimately led to a court case in 2012. The trial drew considerable media attention, with many questioning whether Bramble's off-field troubles would come to define him. However, after a 4-day hearing at Teesside Crown Court, he was found not guilty on all counts. Though legally cleared, the public perception proved harder to shake. For many, the damage to his reputation lingered, adding fuel to the ridicule that had long followed him since his early Premier League days. These events, though challenging, didn't mark the end of his story. In fact, they seemed to spark a quiet transformation. Bramble chose a path of reflection and rebuilding, focusing on personal growth and contributing to the game in a different way. After retiring in 2013, he stayed away from the media spotlight and instead returned to where it all began, Ipswich Town. There, he took on a role with the club's academy, helping to mentor and shape the next generation of footballers. For some, it was an unexpected move, but those who knew him well weren't surprised. Within the dressing room, Bramble had always been known for his professionalism and steady demeanour. Qualities that don't always shine under matchday pressure, but are invaluable in guiding young players. Beyond coaching, Bramble has also spoken candidly about his experiences in football. In doing so, he's added important perspective to a career too often reduced to memes and mishaps. Today, Bramble is no longer just a punchline he was made out to be. He's also a mentor, an advocate, and someone who has weathered more than most people realise. The narrative is slowly shifting from a misunderstood figure on the pitch to someone who has found meaning and purpose behind it. Titus Bramble's story is a reminder that a footballer's legacy isn't defined solely by what happens under the floodlights. Sometimes it's what comes after that tells you who they really are. And there we have it. The story of Titus Bramble, a footballer whose name became shorthand for defensive mishaps, a punchline on terraces and in tabloids alike. From his early promise at Ipswich Town to his high-profile move to Newcastle United, Bramble was never short of talent. But it was the errors, the lapses in concentration, the moments that stuck in the minds of fans for all the wrong reasons that came to define his career. Yet, it's easy to forget the full picture. Nearly 300 Premier League appearances, a player who, on his day, could be dominant in the air, composed on the ball, and capable of putting in solid performances against the best in the world. But football, as we know, is rarely just about what you do right. It's about the moments that linger. And for Bramble, those moments were often costly. After retirement, his name resurfaced, but not for reasons linked on the pitch. Legal issues and deeply serious allegations followed. While he was ultimately cleared of the most severe charges, the stain of that period remains. Not just in public perception, but in the legacy of a career that was already complicated. So where does that leave us? Titus Bramble, not just a footballer with a reputation for mistakes, but a man whose post-playing life further blurred the line between public narrative and personal reality. It's a career wrapped in contradictions, potential and underachievement, occasional brilliance and consistent ridicule. But here's the thing, was Bramble truly the disaster many remember him as? Or was he simply a footballer trapped in a story he couldn't rewrite? Thanks again for watching my video. I'm still enjoying a lot of these recap videos on footballers when I was much more younger. So if you like this kind of content, do let me know. Like, comment, subscribe, and as always, I'll see you soon.